how are the members handling this cognitive dissonance of him pleading guilty?
The church released, their press statement. Again, it states that his rights were taken away. It wasn't a fair, trial. The evidence was false. They're also stating that he pleaded guilty to avoid, the church being, publicly humiliated.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ex-Morgan with My Spiritual Life, and today I'm so excited because I've got Michael here, who used to be a member of La Luz Del Mundo, a cult that was started in Mexico. If you haven't seen my older videos talking about that cult, they are phenomenal, very interesting, and I'm really excited because today Michael is going to recap for us what happened with Nasson Garcia's trial. Nasson Garcia was the apostle of the church, which translated like in Mormonism would be like our equivalent of the prophet. Like he was the head honcho, and then he got arrested. So Michael, thank you for being here. I know it's such a big deal being able to find people willing to talk about this because it is scary. Your religion doesn't like people leaving, and they really don't like people talking about it.
Yes.
Well, can you give us a slight overview of, first of all, what happened with Nasson getting arrested? And like that happened back in what year was it?
If I'm not mistaken, it was probably 2019.
Right. And it
Yes,
was very kind of out of the blue, right? All of a sudden, he was arrested, and the church came out and was like, "Don't look at the news," right? Back in 2019.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what they were told. I was already out at that time, but it just flooded the news. I guess it was such a mega church that the second he was arrested, it's just the news channels picked it up in seconds. So
Right.
it was just like it's like a jaw dropper. You're like, oh my God.
Right. So at the time, what were the members saying about him being arrested? Or did most of them not know?
If I'm not if I, don't want to say, that what it's truth, but what I believe is that they did not know at that time, when he got arrested. Because usually within this church, if, something happens, they're on the news or someone's talking negatively, their point of view is just ignore it. Don't look it up. Don't Google it. What we say is what you're going to be told.
Right.
So don't look at the news channels. Don't Google it, because it's all fake. It's false.
Right. Okay. So a little more backstory about him getting arrested. He's the prophet of this church, right? The apostle is what they call him. And he gets arrested for like 30 different accounts of crazy serious crimes. Like rape, child rape, like production of child pornography,
sex trafficking.
Really serious stuff. And then you have the church that's just all like, no, like,
yeah,
he's such a great man, he's so good, like this is just Satan or whatever. Was that kind of what was happening? Like they're just shoving it off like, no, don't think about it.
Yeah, what they always say, if you ever hear like something like, something happening in the church, it's usually always a conspiracy. They're conspiring against him or against the church. That's the reason why he was arrested. That the videos or the charges were all planted evidence. None of it's real. So that's the reason why the trial kept getting pushed back, was because of this, the evidence supposedly that he's not getting fair trial, or his rights were taken away. A lot of things that were getting pushed back for this reason.
It was just absolutely mind-blowing. Like to sit here and to think that like it's 2022, like it's the world is more like progressive and I would say more intelligent than it's ever been. And then to have like a cult, like a mega church leader like him, like under such serious charges. I mean, it wasn't just like something small, like, he stole something at a Walmart or something, like some very serious charges with tons of witnesses and victims coming forward, and for the members of this church to be like, nope. And it shows how powerful, first of all, that conditioning is growing up, and second of all, that persecution complex of like what you're able to convince yourself is true underneath the guise of that persecution complex of like, oh, this is just the Catholic Church out to get us, which is what some people believed, right? The Catholic Church or the government, like someone's out to get us, and it has nothing to do with this perfect man. And interestingly enough, like it turns into this survival thing of like, I want to keep him on this pedestal because otherwise this framework I'm living my life in is wrong, and that's so scary to me, right? Right.
Or the loss of that sense of community they have, obviously, which I do understand. But I believe it's a lot of factors that play into like wanting to finally see the truth.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that play into it. But hopefully, you know, as time goes on, I hope, you know, the people of that community do open their eyes and do see that it is wrong.
Yeah.
And find their way out of it.
I hope so too, man. I hope so too. So then what happens is he ends up awaiting trial, and the trial gets pushed back because it was scheduled for November or October of like 2021, and it got pushed back. And then, recap us on what just happened like a week ago with the plea deal.
So he pled guilty, you know, the beginning of June. And then he pled guilty to 3 counts, which was, you know, the oral, you know, with the oral, and then, you know, with the, you know, minor. And so I believe, you know, a couple days later, he went in front of the judge to get his sentencing. And at that point, that's when the Jane Does decided to speak, you know, give their testimonies while he was sitting there. So it's, you know, started from Jane, you know, it was a Jane Does. It was, you know, the parents of the Jane Does, either the wife or the husband, you know, who decided to speak, you know, at the court. It was heartbreaking. It was, Jesus, it was like, I couldn't hold in my tears when I would hear their testimonies. You know, there was one specifically, it was Jane Doe 5, where came out as his niece, his blood niece. You know, how she would say, you know, at one point she said, you know, is it okay if I call you uncle now? She was like, or should I call you Nasson? She was like, because you would like when I would call you uncle when you would rape me. So it was, everything came out, you know, they wrote down, you know, their testimonies, because that's, you know, that's the last time they would be able to give it to the judge. Hopefully change his mind, you know, give him, you know, life, or, you know, higher than 16, because I believe he deserved more than 16 years.
Right. Absolutely. So tell me, as far as like, what are the members saying about this? Because they have to know that he's going to prison, right? Because he's not head of the church. He's not speaking to the church right now. How are the members handling like this cognitive dissonance of him pleading guilty?
Correct. So the church released, you know, their press statement, you know, those people that are in charge of it. It did state, you know, it states that his rights were taken away. It wasn't a fair, you know, trial. The evidence was false. But they're also stating that he pled guilty to avoid, you know, the church being, you know, publicly humiliated, or, you know, supposedly getting, you know, death threats, you know, all this information. So they believe that that's the reason why he pled guilty, or, you know, vice versa, how he's saying, you know, if it's because God is, you know, that's his plan. That's God's plan. Or they try to, you know, it's because
like it's God's plan for him to go to prison, kind of like a Moses thing or something.
Correct.
Like,
that's what they use as, you know, comparison.
I
Or
could see
also
it.
how his father, you know, when he was arrested for the same thing, when his father was in charge. But again,
Why the
they thought it was
world
conspiracy.
prosecutes the apostles.
Yes, but back then, I guess obviously it was a little different with, you know, the laws and how it's different now in court. So, but
wow,
yeah.
this is insane. Okay, so what other things did you notice as far as like when the trial came out? Like, I think because you mentioned to me earlier about members getting on, what was it, Twitter or Facebook or something, and posting. What kind of things were you seeing the membership say?
So on Twitter, like the one that like picked me, like irked me off the most, was one how this girl was saying, oh, it's all false. We know who Nasson is. We know him. And they're saying we also know the people that are accusing him. They're all lying. And I read it and I was gonna move on, but he was like, you know what? Let me, get some people angry today. So I commented. I was like, yeah. I was like, well, I knew Nasson too. I knew him, but doesn't mean we knew what was going on behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
You don't have a
Absolutely.
camera in his room or in his house, FaceTime him. He could be doing something completely different while you're at home eating.
Right, right.
So I was like, how are you guys defending a man that you know nothing about?
Right, right. It's not like they have this long-standing personal relationship with him and know
Correct.
what's, like you said, what's going on behind closed doors. All they know is
Correct.
listening to like his sermons and I mean
Right.
listening to what the membership has to say about him, which obviously like the church itself has a lot of propaganda that
Yep.
is really pushing home this idea that he's this perfect guy. Oh
Yeah.
man.
There's other ones that are like, they're like, oh, he's an honorable man. He'll be back. We're waiting for him. All of this stuff. It's like, oh my Jesus. It's like I it becomes speechless after a while. I was like, you can't argue with people that are so, brainwashed by something. You could give your opinion, your thought. Hopefully they take you into consideration. But, you can't argue with them. So
It's like talking to a wall. It's gonna go
yeah.
nowhere if they're heavily indoctrinated, which is so
Yes.
crazy. And again, on the outside, people might not understand. They might look at this and be like, "How do you like hear him get arrested and not just like up and be like, oh, I'm out of here?" And there
Correct.
are some members that react that way. There are some, but most of them are so heavily indoctrinated. All of their friends, all of their family are indoctrinated, and that is a very difficult mental space to break out of. Even if you
Yes.
want to, it's not easy. It's like your whole life someone was telling you the sky is blue, and then one day they tell you it's green, and
Right.
everyone in your life has always told you it's blue. You're just going to be like, no way, you're crazy. Like
It's still
it's
blue. I see it.
yes, yes. And that confirmation bias is so powerful too, because
Yes.
you have those experiences like at your revivals and things like that that really affirm in your own mind that it's true, and it's hard to wrestle out of that. Wow. Okay. So question about this is, do you think the membership, so he's supposed to go to prison for 16 years. Has the judge hasn't changed his mind on that, or is it too late to change his mind?
No, so that's during his sentencing. That was why the Jane Does went to go speak to him to try to convince
Yeah.
him. Maybe listening to their testimonies, what they went through, the evidence they have within themselves. Maybe move it up a little bit, give him life. But at the end, after he said he was sorry to them. He also apologized, and he was like, my hands are tied. He was like,
Yeah.
this is what I could give. So 16 years with 8 months is what they could
Okay.
give for those 3 counts. And then at the end, right before he walked off, he literally looked at Nasson and he was like, sir, you are a sexual predator. And then walked off.
Oh my gosh, the judge
Yeah.
said that to him?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So were you freaking out watching this go on? Not the trial, like their depositions or whatever you call it?
Yeah. It was like, I cried, through a lot of
Yeah.
them. Because it's like, you were part of the community, and it's just weird to hear, this man, obviously for some couple years you looked up to, could do this
Yeah.
to young kids. And
Yeah.
then also it also pissed me off how they're speaking, and it's like some of them are saying, I lost my family, everything. And I was like, well, how the fuck are your parents gonna be like, oh, that's not true, you're lying, you were never raped? Like, that's, I would believe, would be the first person that would be like, I got you, don't worry.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it's so like, and it's so like they're all so brainwashed, indoctrinated, that even your parents be like, no, that's a lie.
Yeah.
But there were
Oh,
parents that believed them. There was a mom that
yeah.
did speak about her daughter. She was like, I can't believe, I left her there. She's like, I trusted to leave her there. And she was like, and
Yeah.
look it.
So scary. It sets such a scary, I'll say this. Religion, not all religion, but some religions can set a very, very scary precedent when they
Of course.
teach you to trust your church leaders because it can
Yes.
leave you vulnerable, like these girls were vulnerable to being abused and not understanding that, like, that this is not how it's supposed to be when you're and the parents too, like the parents are putting their kids in situations that they shouldn't have been because they were taught to trust
Right.
the leadership of the church and how great they are and how trustworthy and amazing they are. And so I know it has happened in a lot of churches, and even when like the church itself is more or less harmless, it can still set this precedence of a really dangerous mentality of like trust your religious community, when maybe you should not always do that just because someone is Mormon or someone is part of like La Luz del Mundo. You shouldn't necessarily trust them, right? Just because
Right.
someone's the apostle, you shouldn't necessarily trust it. But it's so hard for them to grasp that. I know emotionally, I dealt with a lot of abuse under the guise of it was like spiritually what God wanted.
Right.
And it was so messed up, but at the time I couldn't see out of it because I had so much trust in God's authority and God's ministers and bishops and preachers and stuff like that. So it's crazy and it's so sad.
Yeah, it's just they take, advantage of your vulnerability, your trust in God, your faith that you're looking to believe in something, and they just run with it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely terrifying. So tell me, what do you think is going to happen with the membership as far as like if Nason is behind bars, can he really run the church from prison, or is someone going to step up and become the apostle other than him, or do you think they're just going to wait it out?
what I've heard, before, his sentencing, a couple months ago, when my sister keeps, in touch, on track with, the news more, she was first stating that they were going to make his son the new apostle.
Right,
And
right.
then, afterwards, he now, I'm reading that he's saying that he's still gonna run the church behind bars.
Okay,
He'll
okay.
communicate with them, by phone calls or by letters. And that's how they would, I guess, that's how they're gonna run their church.
Man, that's crazy. So his son, I remember hearing a little bit about his son. His son's kind of been in a lot of trouble, or is that, or do you know much about Nason's son?
No, I don't know their family. No, I wasn't
Okay.
close with them like that. Um, but you do hear things, but again, I don't want to say like it's true. Um,
Of
but I would
course. If
believe,
you don't
if people
know.
that knew him closer, maybe he would be a troublemaker, because your teenage years, not everyone's
Right.
perfect. You're gonna make
Absolutely.
mistakes. So, but that's what
And I
I've
can only
heard.
imagine having that pressure of like supposed to have a
Right.
perfect
That whole,
family.
yeah.
And also, like,
Um,
from his end, maybe seeing that it was bullshit because maybe he saw some of the weird stuff that was going on. Like, maybe not all of it, but maybe enough signs to be like, wait a second, my dad's not perfect. And then, like, that
right.
cognitive dissonance could be really confusing. I
Hopefully, it does
wonder.
make him
Yeah.
question it.
I know, right? That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments you have about kind of the trial, about Nason going to prison, about the membership? Any other thoughts you wanted to share about that?
No, not at the moment. I think that's pretty much what went on during the trial.
Great. Thank you for the recap and thank you for talking about this. I was so excited when you reached out to me because it is hard to find people willing to talk about this
Yeah.
stuff because it's such scary like potential backlash. Much more intense than what I'm used to like as an ex-Mormon. So I
It's
really
like up
appreciate
there, it's like
it.
escalated.
Oh,
But
very, very much
yes.
so. Very much
But
so.
also
Thank you.
it's just one thing not connected to not specifically about the trial, but there is a foundation. I have a friend that also left the church, an ex-member. She's an activist. She did create a foundation called Moises Piado Foundation. It was an also an ex-member that was abused by Samuel, the old apostle.
Is that
It's
Nasson's dad or?
yeah, Nasson's
Yeah,
dad.
yep.
She made a foundation for anyone that's seeking help, that wants to leave but scared, to reach out to that foundation, and they're able to assist you with relocation or any information like that.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Okay, I will get
Yes.
the link below for
Yes.
people. That is perfect. Thank you so much for
Yes.
mentioning that. Amazing. Okay, thank you so much for your help, Michael, and I hope we can do many more videos together about
Yes,
this
I
because
hope so.
this cult is so fascinating to me.
Of course, yes.
Thank you, Michael. I'll see
Thank
you
you.
later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.